Okay, so let me start. Welcome to everybody, those who are online on YouTube and also those who are part of teams and are coming to a formal invitation. So it's our first event, 2025. We have been running this QCA community for a few years and some of you have been part of this journey. So the idea is to reinvigorate this year with greater participation from additional people and just spread the learning. So I'll start first with the acknowledgement of country, the land on which Swinburne, my university, and I'm currently situated. So we respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which Swinburne's Australian campuses are located in Melbourne's east and outer east, and pay our respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. We also respectfully acknowledge Swinburne's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, students, alumni, partners, and visitors. With that, let us formally start this session. So as I mentioned, the purpose or the objective is to further our collective QCA knowledge for scholarly impact. It's still a new method. The best practices are still emerging, and Andreas is here. He was in touch with me, like I have been in touch with other senior people who have been implementing this one. So I help him a little bit. Other people helped me as well. So we started this community of practice so that we all can further our QCA knowledge. So that's the objective. And thanks for those who formally joined this one. We have got about 50 people part of this as a formal membership. You can just write to me and I can add you to a Teams and email list, and you can keep getting updates from us. With that, let us go further and okay. So the agenda, we'll have a little bit of introduction just to set the stage. But the idea behind this one is that many people won't work on it. They need to get started. So my colleague from ECU Perth, Edith Cohen, Ahmed, would guide us through an illustration. He runs software, Excel file where you could run along with us. So Ahmed would guide you on that. And once Ahmed has concluded that demo, we'll talk through what we have achieved and go deeper into the advanced or essentials topic that would get you started from running a demo, software demo, getting some output and implementing that for your research. And then we'll have some additional reading. So I think it's a full package and there will be value for you. And then last, we'll talk if you got anything to add. Some of you have experience in implementing that, and we'll also learn from that as well.
Can I record the session, please?
Sorry?
Can I record the session, please?
Ahmed, sorry?
Can I mind to record the session?
Yeah, I'm recording. Yeah, I'm recording. Yeah. Yeah, I'm recording.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, let me start again. Maybe I didn't, right? Let me record. Okay. Okay, so that's the agenda. With that, we'll go. Ahmed, would you be adding people? I think there are some people, trying to. Can you get them added, please? Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's go further. Okay, I think I have given that example to some of you earlier, but it's a fantastic example that sets the stage for QCA. As researcher, many of us are from social sciences, business, management, information system, marketing. What we do essentially is we understand or explain social phenomena. That's what our research is mainly about. So I'll take a real world example and try to see how QCA fits in. What you see here is the famous Victorian or Melbourne, as I am in. In Australia, we had, the pandemic was a little bit different to us in here in Melbourne than to the other parts of Australia. we had quite a few outbreaks, and there were strict measures put in place to get on top of the COVID virus. Those measures were, essentially for a good 2.5 years, we worked from home. We stayed at home for the whole day except for 1 hour. There were 5 kilometers travel limits, and that too for essential grocery shoppings. We had school closed, retail outlets were closed except for the grocery shops. Gyms, swimming, indoor sports, all closed. Even outdoor children playgrounds, everything was closed, and there was a night curfew. We just couldn't go out of the house. So there was a social phenomena. We wanted to COVID-19 outbreak, and the state of Victoria wanted to control that till the vaccines emerge and life can get back to normal as it has now. So in a hypothetical situation, if we were to examine this as a formal research project, what options did we have? Typically, as social scientists, business or management researcher, what we do is we are interested in explaining or understanding an outcome of interest. In this case, effective pandemic response. We reduce mobility, hence infection spread. People stay at home till we get some vaccines are manufactured and they are tested and they're good to use. So that was the whole idea. And some of the explanatory factors, the measures that were taken in by the Victorian or the state government, I've listed those over here. What options do we have generally? We've got two types of researches, qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative would try to have an in-depth understanding of the phenomena, how this happened, whereas quantitative, what it does is tries to establish statistical association between input variables and output variables. So these two are our options. But if we were to ask our state chief health officer, if we were to ask him, one of the factors would be have significant contributions to the outcome, like a typical deductive quantitative research, you would say that the notion of INUS, insufficient but non-redundant parts of unnecessary but sufficient conditions. So in essence, what does INUS mean, and I'll talk more about that later, what it says is that all those individual factors may not be sufficient in affecting an outcome. They need to combine to create the necessary surplus. That's the whole logic. So it's more of a combinative knowledge, which is at the heart of QCA. So what QCA does is it just brings, or it sees a problem somewhat differently to what the traditional qualitative or quantitative research does. It's not an antithesis of these two. It complements. How I will explain shortly. So the point I'm just trying to make here is that what QCA does is that it examines a combination of factors leading to an outcome, how they come together to affect an outcome. That's essentially a more fine-grained explanation of what I previously talked. So in previous slides, we had multiple explanatory factors, 7, 8, 10. Here, what I have done is I have reduced those into 4. So those causal conditions or explanatory factors or theoretical attributes, A, B, C, D, there are 4. Now, what we see here, mathematically, these 4 can combine in a variety of ways. 2 raised to power 4, 6, there are 16 combinations. And some of those combinations would contribute to outcome. Some of those combinations would not contribute to that outcome. This is what we call as conjunction. Outcomes rarely have a single cause, but rather result from the interdependence of multiple conditions. So multiple conditions come together in different ways and they'll contribute to an outcome. So what QCA does, or we also call it complex causality or configurational theorizing, it relies on conjunction, the additive or combinative effect of multiple causal conditions, creating the necessary surplus to cause an outcome. The second important differentiating factor of QC or configurational theorizing is what we call as equifinality. So what you see here, I have just spoken that there are 16 possible combinations that can cause an outcome. Not all of them, but some of them would cause that outcome. That means that there are multiple pathways towards that outcome. So that's equifinality. Different combinations can result in the same output. And the third one is also very important, which is what we call as causal asymmetry. What causal asymmetry say is that, like in typical regression, we know that greater the x, greater the y, less the x, less the y. That we call as symmetry. There's a symmetrical relationship. But in QCA, what it does is that it says that the presence of a factor or presence of a combination of factors may contribute to an outcome, but that their absence may not lead to the absence of that outcome or low outcome. So there are three attributes that define QCA logic or configurational theorizing logic: conjunction, equifinality, asymmetry. Equifinality means multiple pathways. Asymmetry means that the presence may contribute, but absence would not hurt. And conjunction is the combination of factors that come together. So after explaining this logic of, now you can call it configurational theorizing, complex causality, QCA, let me go and explain these things in a little bit more detail before my partner Ahmed would take over and give you a demo. What it does is that, as I mentioned, INUS, its the logic is that insufficient but non-redundant parts of unnecessary but sufficient condition. So that's the acronym INUS stands for. Essentially, it says that the individual conditions may not be by themselves significant enough to cause an outcome, but when they combine, they would generate that surplus over and above the sum of the amounts could create separately. That's what the INUS logic, so combinative logic. And then instead of regression or those statistical analysis, what it does is called necessity and sufficiency analysis. Simple set theory, Boolean logic, on and or and which is different to correlation logic, because correlation says, keeping everything constant, X would affect Y, where the whole logic is somewhat different. So going to further, so effectively, if you are a qualitative researcher or you are a quantitative researcher, initially QCA was seen somewhere in the middle, trying to bring the two sides together. But then a lot of QCA research went and, that was implemented for quantitative research, survey-based research, or secondary data, as Andreas has done, who is part of this group now. So QCA has been applied to quantitative research largely since its first inception. Somewhat on the qualitative data, there have been some issues which had restricted its implementation. But to me, it's tailor-made for qualitative, and it can help qualitative researcher improve their productivity. So we'll talk about how it can be implemented for quantitative data and how it can be implemented for qualitative data just shortly. But it's just, initially it was thought to be a middle ground between holistic causality and linear causality, called complex causality, with relatively less number of data points required to generate output as compared to survey research. Okay, so I think we have talked about conjectural causation, we have talked about equifinality, we've talked about asymmetry. That's the core differentiating factor for QCA. We've also talked about that it uses set theory, and if you're just using it as a method, it's qualitative comparative analysis method, but increasingly there is a realization that it's not a method, it's more of a theorizing approach. And for that, we call configurational theorizing. You think in terms of conjuncture, you think in terms of equifinality, you think in terms of asymmetry. That's what the configurational theorizing logic is, and it's implemented through QCA. Okay, now with that, what I'll do is I will set the stage for illustrative example. I think you've got now enough background. That was the intention, 15 minutes. So we have taken one example from Reagan's book, 2009, when the references in the slides, which I'll share after this workshop. It's a study, OECD study of 18 countries. And what it does is it examines survival of democracies, right? And breakdown of democracies in 18 countries along 5 explanatory factors or causal conditions or theoretical attributes. If the country is developed, if the country is urbanized, if the country is industrialized, if it's literate, and if it has got political stability. Along these 5 explanatory factors, the outcome of interest is survival, or democracy survived, or breakdown, it broke down. So the question is, research question is, what factors lead to the survival of democracies faced with economic and political upheaval? So that comes from Reagan's book. And the Excel sheet that we circulated actually had that data file that would be used to run this software now by Ahmed. So these are the 18 countries. These are the 5 attributes, causal conditions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is the outcome, which is the survival. So this data has already been calibrated between 0 to 1. So calibration is a very important step and core building block of QCA analysis, which we'll talk more in detail later. But at this stage, in order to help you run the software and just to get to a feel of what are the output, how to interpret roughly, we'll start with calibrated data. 5 conditions already calibrated, survived is the outcome. I will hand over to Ahmed now. Please, Ahmed, and you can now run a demo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohsen. So I will take you through downloading the software and then run the analysis.
Ahmed, can you share my screen? Yeah, please.
Yes, sure. Yeah. I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can share. We can see your screen. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I just sent you the download link in the chat box. And when you open this page, you will find that you can download it for Windows operating systems and for Mac operating system. So I recommend to click this one if you have Windows, or this one if you have Mac. And then later on, if you have time, it's good to go through the manual. It provides very good guidance on how to use fsQCA with some useful links. When you download it, you will have the zipped file. So the first step is to unzip the file, of course, and then we have this one, extract. And within the folder, you will find the fsQCA.exe. Click on this one. And you will have this software open. Now you can see that the software consists of 2 panels. Before I proceed, should I wait for anyone who's still downloading it?
Yeah, Ahmed, the YouTube people are saying that it's echoing at your end. So if you have some other, do you have YouTube open over there? So please close that.
No, nothing actually.
Nothing. Okay, and the participant, please, we are here to run it with you. So if you can join with us, so that you've got the same output, if you can download it, if you can run it, that will be fantastic, right? Please let us know if you're following us, so we can wait and take you along us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Also, Mohsen sent you an Excel file yesterday, and I just uploaded the same file in the chat box. We will use it to analyze as a sample to analyze the data. The first step, we go to File, Open, and select the folder. fsQCA can open folders or files of CSV format. It can open TXT format, text format, and it can open .dat format that is generated by SPSS. This is for fsQCA version 3.1 and after that. Before 3.1, we could only open the CSV files. So here we go. Here's the data from the Excel. And we can see the countries. we can see the causal conditions. Those are developed, urban, literate, industrial, stable, and the outcome, which is survived. So, as Mohsen mentioned, that all data we have is already calibrated, being calibrated before, and all data should be between 0 and 1. Mohsen will touch on this again in a few minutes. So the first step to start with is to go to analyze. Let me know if I'm a bit fast or if you want me to wait for you to apply the steps in your computer. Otherwise, I will continue with the analysis. So we go to analyze and then a truth table algorithm. And here we can see the causal conditions again, and we can see the outcome. So this is the outcome, survive. We set the outcome in this box. And then we add the causal conditions under the causal condition box. All right. It's good as well. It's good practice to take the show solution cases in output, and I will show you how this makes a difference. So we click here. Okay, and then we can see the truth table. Any questions so far? Should I wait for someone or should I proceed? All good?
All good, all good, thanks.
Yep. All right. So we have data now here. Okay, and we can see that fsQCA software generated new columns. We can see the number column. This is a new one, and this represents the number of cases, which means that we have 4 cases with this combination, like 1 for all causal conditions. We have 3 cases that has this combination of causal conditions, which is all zeros. 2 cases with 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, and so on. All right. To review these cases, we click on this one, and then we can see that the 4 cases for the first row here are Belgium, Czechoslovakia, Netherlands, and United Kingdom. You remember the tick box that we ticked? We can see the countries because we ticked that box. If we didn't tick that box, then we will not be able to see these cases or these countries. So this is the first step, is to run the truth table. Now, in our case here, we have some cases with like or some combination of conditions with number of 4 cases, 3 cases, and so on. But we also have many 0 cases, and we don't want to use these because these are zeros, so it's not beneficial to keep for our analysis. So what we do next is to remove these by going to edit, delete, and code. And then we write 1 here. Delete rows with number less than 1. And we say number with less than 1 to delete these zeros, considering that we only have 18 records. All right. So now I deleted all zeros here. And note that for this number, if we have large amount of records and we have conducted like large number of surveys, for example, 200 or 300, so it's recommended to use 2 or 3 as the minimum number. So it is in your data. So this is for the number of cases. Now, the next step is set survive to 1 for rows with consistency greater than or equal 0.8. Now, usually sufficient analysis means that the row consistency should equal or greater than 0.8 as per the literature. And Mohsen will touch on this again soon. So we keep this as 0.8, which means that all survived values here under the column, survived column, will turn to 1 if it is equal or greater than 0.8, or it will become, or it will set the survived value to 0 if it is less than 0.8. So now we have the data ready for sufficient analysis. Next step is to click on this one, standard analysis. And we will have three types of analysis here, or three things to consider: either the presence of causal conditions, the absence, or both. For our example, we will select the present option. Marcel also will touch on this soon, but I'll give you just a small hint about it. The present means that our study assumed that all these causal conditions, the presence of these causal conditions, cause the country survival. Okay, sometimes we consider the absence or both, but we'll talk about this in details soon. So we click OK. Now sufficient analysis is ready now. This is the truth table. We minimize it. We go back to the original window, and here we can see the values or the outcomes in the right panel. We can see complex solution, we can see parsimonious, and we can see intermediate solution. We'll get back into these details very soon. Now, and those are the combinations and the values. The next step is to run the necessary condition, which is by clicking, we go to menu here, analyze, and then necessary conditions. Again, we select survive because this is our outcome. We select it here in the outcome box, and then we add the causal conditions in this box. So we select them one by one. Industrial, stable, so we are ready for the necessary conditions. So once we click on this, it will show us the necessary conditions. Marcel also will touch on this very soon, but just to give you a hint, that necessary condition means that the country cannot the country or the conditions with 0.9 consistency with value of 0.9 or above is necessary condition, which is that the country cannot survive without this condition or this factor. Any questions?
Oh no! If no questions, Ahmed, thank you very much for running this demo. Now what we'll do is we'll go back to our slides and we'll see how this demo that you've just concluded aligns with what we have discussed so far. Yep.
Sorry, Dr. Mohsen, I have a question for Ahmed.
Yes, please.
Yes. Ahmed, the not sign when we select the conditions, like the not sign, the wave sign, it means not, like, because literate and not literate. So I thought it's the opposite of, like, if you're testing that this condition is not present, or
that's right. It's the negation, the negation of literate, for example, which is the absence of literate. And we'll explain this in details in the coming few slides.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sadia. Thank you, Ahmed. So let me share my screen again. I'm learning this thing, doing multiple things here now. So be patient with me. Thank you. It does. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you. So let's do whatever Ahmed did in the software. So we had that input file, step 1, calibrated data, all 18 countries. These 18 countries are 18 cases, and they were identified. There were 5 of their attributes, causal conditions that would lead to survive. That already was determined, and we had calibrated from 0 to 1, and we had this. So Ahmed told you, Ahmed ran that software. Now, what essentially happens is, if I tell you the overall logic. So all, as we saw in the input file, there were different combinations, representing the configurations of the cases along those 5 theoretical attributes or causal condition. So what we now be doing is that we will be reducing or minimizing from that big sample to get generalized patterns somewhat. So we do that by first generating a truth table and then minimizing the truth table. And as Ahmed mentioned to you, this is what he had over there. Consistency is simply, it's an important measure. There are two measures that are important in QCA. One is consistency, that simply shows the degree to which data has a consistent relationship between the conditions and the outcome. So 80%, 85% means that for 85%, this combination would cause the outcome. So anything more than 80% is considered to be contributing to the outcome. That's why we rate 1. That's the logic. There's another one called coverage. We'll talk about that later. There's another thing called, so raw consistency is something that we are using, 80% that we are talking here. And then there are other things like PRI consistency and SEM consistency. I'll talk about that later. At this stage, just to give you enough information that you're with us, is that raw consistency, 80%, anything more than 80% would be seen as survived based on the condition. And as Ahmed mentioned, some of the combination configurations do not have any empirical evidence. So you said number of cases 4, 2, some of those case configurations do not. So we have removed them at this stage, but we'll bring them back later during our analysis. So this is what Ahmed ran. Essentially, it's not difficult. You can run it in an Excel file as well, and the software itself is pretty basic. So the analysis or the numbering or the mechanics of it is very, very easy. It's what we want to do with this one. So these 4 cases belong to the first configuration with this consistency score. Previously, I had that software output that Ahmed shown you, and this is a table. This is from Reagan's book. So anything more than 80 would be considered as contributing to survival. Anything less than 80 would not be considered as the contributing to the survival. Okay. Now Ahmed ran that necessity analysis. Remember, the logic is a set theory Boolean logic, and it works that presence of a necessary condition means that it would always be present for that or would almost be present for an outcome to occur, but it may not be sufficient to cause that an outcome. So that means that necessary condition must exist with other complementary condition. So a good practice is that you perform necessity analysis. So 90% cutoff is generally considered any condition that is 90% or greater consistently linking to an outcome is considered as a necessary condition, and Ahmed ran it for you. And after necessary, the core thing is what we call sufficiency. What group of conditions are sufficient to cause an outcome? As Ahmed mentioned to you, this is the standard analysis. There are 3 options. Ahmed opted for present, not absent or present or above. There's a good reason for that, and I'll just talk about that in the next slide. So what we're doing it in sufficiency analysis, we had multiple configuration to begin with, 16, or in this case we had 32 or more configurations. We wanted to minimize those based on truth table minimization. When we finish, we'll have 3 types of solution. The minimized truth table would either be a complex solution, would either be a parsimonious solution, or would either be an intermediate solution. These are the 3 outputs that are a result of fsQCA analysis. Complex solution is simple, relies on the empirical evidence of your data. For example, you saw there Ahmed removed any configuration or any row that has 0 membership. So there was no case presence over there. So he removed those. So all the configuration that had at least 1 case membership, that is reflected in our empirical evidence. Complex solution just mentions that. But again, we need to be generalizing. We need to be looking beyond our empirical data as well. For that, parsimonious solution helps. Logical remainders are those rows which had no membership of cases. So they had 0 membership, but they are included back in the parsimonious solution, just to bring a little bit of diversity to the solution that would be beyond the empirical evidence at our hand. So we've got complex, we've got parsimonious. You'll get that straight away when Ahmed ran. The intermediate solution is a compromise between complex and parsimonious, and compromise or somewhat in between, because that would rely on the substantive knowledge of the researcher. What is the substantive knowledge of the researcher? Like Ahmed said, the developed country should is more likely to be contributing to survival. Urban and literate and industrial and stable countries are more likely from our past substantive knowledge, body of knowledge. They are likely to contribute to a democracy being survived. So based on that, we chose present for this one, theoretical or past substantive knowledge. Intermediate solution is widely regarded as the solution that we should be reporting in QCA analysis. So explained what Ahmed did in the software, why he opted for present, for developed, urban, literate, industrial, and stable. Now here we've got the option. This is the final solution. You just run, as you saw, Ahmed, it's just a millisecond. You just click, you get the answer. Now anyone can do that, pretty easy. You take number, but you need to understand what you're doing, and it's a very iterative process. You have to go back and see are the results making sense, and then if the substantive, review it on the in light of the substantive knowledge. So what we've got is we've got three solutions here. We've got complex, just based on the empirical configuration. And when I say complex 1 and complex 2, what I'm saying here is remember equifinality? So this combination of attributes would contribute to democracy survival. And there is another. So these two would be parallel solution or equifinal solution to democracy survival based on our complex analysis. And if I interpret that, so we had 5 conditions to begin with. What it is saying is developed. When you see a hash sign here, that means inverse of urban. So how we do that is developed is, if developed is like say 0.84, or if urban is 0.84, this inverse of urban would be 1 minus 0.84. So that will be the negation of urban, that is 0.16. This sign means the negation. So less urban, developed, literate, less industrial, and stable countries are likely to have the democracy survived. Another solution, complex, developed, urban, literate, industrial, and stable. So these 5, the higher it is, the better it is. Straightforward, right? But there's a little bit of catch here. Similarly, the parsimonious. Now, what we are doing is we are including logical remainders, which are not empirically observed, but trying to bring it back. And it has developed country and less industrial country, urban and stable, 2 different pathways towards an outcome. And the intermediate solution, which is in response to the directional expectation or based on researchers' substantive knowledge, as Ahmed showed to you, we've got 2 separate solutions as well. We've got developed, we've got literate, lack of industrial, this hash is negative, negation, stable, developed, urban, literate, and stable. So there are 2 different pathways. Now, as mentioned, consistency, we have got consistency of each configuration, but we also have consistency of the solution. Another important parameter for QCA is coverage, which is similar to ask here, but not exactly, is the empirical strength of the solution, showing the number of cases following a specific path. So this path would have a unique coverage, and then the overall solution would have, combining these 2 pathways, would have this coverage. So what we have just done is we have ran a very simple exercise going through all the steps. I will recount the steps. Number 1 was we calibrated, which was already calibration. Number 2 was we ran a truth table, and then we minimized based on the standard analysis, and that gave us this solution. Pretty basic. The software, as I mentioned, you can run through that in Excel, not very difficult. Key thing is how we are using it for our research design. So after running this demo, what I'll do now is I will talk through further details that you would need in order to implement this method for your research. Now, sometimes you would have come across fuzzy QCA or sometimes just QCA. So QCA has many variants. If it's 1 or 0 binary, it's crisp. And then we've got 3 set fuzzy, then we've got 4 set, 6 set. And here in the example, what we did was the calibrated data was continuous. It was from 0 to 1. The membership of that condition could assume any value. We saw that, but it could be 1, 0.5, just 3 values as well. It could be 4 values. It could be 6 values. The example that we did was continuous fuzzy set. So this is what the 2 types. Okay. Now, types of projects that are suitable to this one. It could be used for hypothesis testing, but not statistically based on set theory, mainly because of the AEST causation, its complementary and substitution effect, anything to do with conjectural, equifinal, or asymmetrical analysis. It's a great tool for typology development. For a long time, and if Tuan is here, I remember presenting this 2 years ago, and Tuan asked what's the difference between typology and taxonomy. And I wasn't really sure as well, but I think I have got the answer. I know the difference between typology and taxonomy, but I wasn't really sure how QCA leads to typologies. But all recent work, and one of my recent work is actually developing a typology based on the configurational logic shown by the empirical data. I'll talk about that later, but one of the earlier was an Academy of Management paper by FIS 2011. It's equally applicable to both qualitative and quantitative research design. When you start with qualitative, you have to do something. And when it comes to the numbers, it is essentially the same. Once you get to those numbers, or once you calibrate the qualitative data, it becomes as if it's a quantitative study. So you can call it a mixed study if you're using it for qualitative data. Okay, now let's quickly talk about how to implement QCA. If you're using it for a survey-based research, or like Andres did for a secondary data analysis, which I did as well. So if it's a survey-based, essentially the same. You have to, run a measurement model. You have to do all the prereqs. But instead of statistical analysis, you run a QC analysis. If you're doing a secondary analysis, you just have to justify the proxies that you use for the secondary measures that you've used, and then you run a fsQCA analysis. For qualitative, there's a little bit of extra work that I'll talk through in a minute. Most important thing is the calibration of conditions, because whatever output you would get would be subject to how you calibrate it. The key thing is what Greg Hammer 2018, they've got this great suggestion, which is effective calibration is half conceptual, half empirical, process of identifying thresholds that meaningfully represent differences in kind and differences in degree. So differences in kind is that your data must contribute to both presence of an outcome and absence of an outcome, 1 or 0, as we saw. And differences in degree would be that the calibration is from 0 to 1. It should have sufficient variation in the degree of the presence of an attribute or absence of an attribute that would lead to an outcome. That's the whole very, very useful suggestion, and I have reflected on this a great deal. How? I'll just talk about that in a few minutes. A good example of the thresholds for survey research is 5 is full membership. So if you're using a 3-point membership fuzzy logic, so what you are interested in, presence of a membership of a condition, a non-membership of a condition, or crossover, beyond which you will have presence, and below that you will have absence. So if you think of a simple 5-point Likert scale, so 5, 1, 3, 1 is 0 presence, 3 is 0.5, and 5 become 1. So that's calibrating a 5-point Likert scale. You can apply the same logic to 7-point Likert scale as well. So I think I've mentioned how to do survey research. I've got this paper here, which I published in 2021. And what I've been trying to do is, after experiencing that not enough detail is provided by many of the QCA studies, so what I've done is I've provided a lot of details. Anybody who reads that should be able to follow it for survey research. There is an appendix as well. And in appendix, I talk about calibration rules, so you can go there. Key thing is when you're doing survey research, your hypothesis, some people call it proposition, but effectively what you're doing is you're identifying some patterns or proposed relationships that you're going to test. Those relationships should reflect conjunction, equifinality, and asymmetry, because that's the newness of using QCA. And we can call it complementary and substitution effects as well. So it's link over there, and it's part of our provide that, and Teams as well, you can have a link. Okay. So qualitative, I understand many of you are qualitative researcher, and I have spent, I cannot tell you, last 2, 3, 4 years, a great deal of reflection, reading for how to use it qualitative data. So many researchers say that the name is Qualitative Comparative Analysis, but it is somewhat lost for qualitative data. And there are good reasons for that, because how to allocate membership of qualitative data, that's the sticky point. Now, I was fortunate enough to, suggest an approach and publish in one of the journals that you could see here last year. So that was a great exercise in reflection. I had to go to philosophical positionings, critical realism, just to understand how it can be applied. So if I had to put it in simple words, all qualitative researchers, how you are analyzing your qualitative data, like by simple induction. In inductive analysis, you still do that, but then you have a deductive lens. And along those deductive lens, you allocate those themes. That's the input condition. So your phase 3 is the within case analysis, and it has to be cross case analysis. It's not one case. It has to be a cross case analysis. And then once you allocate the inductive themes to the deductive framework, then you need to do what we call as the set membership. The logic, what I've learned, and there are precedents, and you can go and read the paper as well, it's that identify theoretical ideal types. Theoretical ideal type of 0 membership, that they don't have this condition at all, and then maximum or complete 1, and then 2 in between. So that's the 4 fuzzy points that you can identify, and then you compare your cases for those themes along those ideal types. So that I have done, and I'll try to show that to you in the next slide. Slow. So what you see here in this study, we analyzed the data. All the themes then were fit into the a priori deductive framework that we use: competition, strategic sourcing, and supply chain collaboration. And then we identified their ideal types. What you see here is 0. It's like there's no evidence of that case presenting itself towards any competition practices. And then the other extreme is fully a deep and long-term cooperation for competition with vertical and horizontal. So these are 2 theoretical ideal types, and then this is somewhat, but still more out, and this is more in towards fully in. So 4 fuzzy points, 0, 0.33, 0.66, and 1. And then you analyze in this case, we had 20 cases. We analyze each case for its membership, whether it's competition, and then we gave it a rating 0, 0.33, and it was the calibration that you saw. So comparing your cases through theoretical ideal types is a way, and is a very practical way. I've implemented that. And it's a godsend for qualitative data. You can get quickly to a truth table. Once you go to a truth table, it's effectively the same as a survey-based QCA. We still have some minutes left, and I wanted to touch on a very, very important point before we conclude this session and open for Q&A. Is there is the logic in the calibration is very, very important, as I mentioned. Now, we also talked about the causal asymmetry. What causal asymmetry means is that you have to run the truth table both for the presence of an outcome and the absence of an outcome. So you have to run 2 analysis. So 2 truth table, as Ahmed run just for the survival. You will also run it when the countries did not survive. So effectively running two truth table analysis, which I have done, and I have presented that information. So that's one of my paper, as I mentioned to you. It's Malik and Orr 2022. So this was survey research. So we had 180 or something respondents. So what you're seeing here is the steric. So this sixth configuration with TA yes, TD yes, IID no, and come. So this is one configuration. You would be able to see that it is one for the presence of an outcome and also for the negation of an outcome, which is a logical contradiction. So one configuration cannot contribute to both the presence and absence of the outcome. That means there is something wrong with our approach or our data. So we call that as contradictory configurations. They should not exist. So how to detect that? There are two ways to detect that. Number one way is to plot the truth table for the presence of an outcome to the absence of an outcome, put them together, and when you see that a condition contributes to both an outcome and its absence, so that's not logical, right? So that means that you need to reevaluate, you need to re-examine that. Also, if the PRI consistency, which is a special form of consistency, it is very important to detect contradictory cases. So what you see here is, in this case, it should always be more than 0.5. So it is 0.5 here, but it is not for 0.5. So whenever it is less than 0.5, that means that there is some contradiction there. So there are two ways to detect. One is visual inspection, and any configuration with a PRI consistency score of less than 0.5 needs re-examination. So what are the strategies to resolve logical contradictions? Number one and foremost, recalibrate. Recalibrate. If you cannot, then what you do is deviant case analysis, especially for qualitative cases, because maybe your interpretation of a quote is not. So you examine what actually, try to triangulate that one. So again, in that paper appendix, the reviewer made us go through different approaches. So that's a very solid appendix, covers most of the things that I've talked about. Okay, so in conclusion, it's a great approach. It's very, very simple. The whole mechanics of it, as Ahmed showed to you, matter of seconds. However, we need to be much more thoughtful in that, how we set our design, what the output is coming, and how we are going to go back. It's a very iterative process as well. So the best practices, it's more of a mode of theorizing. It's sort of a theorizing approach than a method. If you just use it method, you're not making most of it. So there are two studies. The Funari, it's a high level, it's Academy of Management paper, very good. I put my name, but I'm very proud of this work as well. It's mainly for qualitative studies. The approach that I mentioned to you, also middle range theorizing. So middle range is also something that you can use QCA for, those of you who are familiar. For the thresholds and parameters, Crackhammer, and these two of my papers, and I've gone very detailed. So unlike other QCA studies, which there may not be much transparency, but I can probably say that if you read these two papers, it should be transparent and it should be very much reproducible. So in essence, that's the whole overview, where what we did was we ran the demo and also we went through important things. Moving forward, before I open the floor for questions and answer, I'll just register 2 points here. One is that we would strengthen the QCA community next month, July 2nd. We are very fortunate that Dr. Federico Iannacchi, I've learned a great deal informally writing to him. He's a senior editor of Information System Journal and an associate professor in management at Sussex. He will be delivering a talk. It's going to be a hybrid event, but you can join and I will circulate it later. And moving beyond, we'll try to have more frequent meetings and also half an hour drop-in sessions as well. So we'll circulate some information to that effect. With that, I conclude my talk, and I open the floor for any questions, please. Thank you.
Hello, Mohsin, can you hear me?
Yes, Madhuka.
Yes, hi. I just have one question regarding the qualitative data. And when we use QCA for qualitative data, especially when we do the calibration, because we have to sort of allocate it to either presence, absence, or let's say 0.33 or 0.66, if I'm not mistaken. I think the next slide or something I show it. Yeah, this one, yeah, the previous one. Yeah. So here when we do this, and from your experience, have you seen any, how was the reviewer feedback for the papers who has used this kind of method for qualitative? I'm asking because when we try to put values to qualitative data, most of the time people sometimes tend to challenge it because how did you really categorize this code as a, like say 0.33 and this code as a 0.66? So how can we really provide valid rationale or method to this when we do the calibration using qualitative data?
Thank you, Madhuka. So this is part of the information that was presented to the reviewers, right? There are additional information as well. So in that paper, there's quite a bit of appendix. So the idea behind the whole one is that in its simplest form is what we are saying is that, of course, these three attributes, and we have identified zero. We have identified two theoretical ideal types, zero and maximum. We have done that, and then in between. Now what we did, Madhuka, is that we had exemplary quotes or illustrative quotes for each of the rating that we gave. For 20 cases, if, for example, case 1, if we said the competition for this case is 0.33, we had an illustrative quote for that.
Yeah.
That explains, and you're doing it a relative basis. For example, if you have 20 cases or 15 cases, for one case, if you rated a case competition at 0.33 and another one you rated at 0.6, now the reviewers can see, right? So but through a code or through some secondary information that can help them triangulate, all your intention is, as I mentioned to you, transparency and reproducibility. Anybody else who would go through this pathway, like a good research, they would be able to come up with a similar type of rating. So yes, if you do somewhat ad hoc, the reviewers might question, but if you've got a method towards that, which we did actually, and this, what we did was we looked at different sources, and they actually did as well. So I remember there was one industrial marketing management 2017 paper that we liked, that's somewhat different, and then there were some others as well. So we actually, based on our methods and the transparency and the whole methodical allocation of these numberings based on, there was a method to that. So if you follow a method,
Yeah.
I think that should be okay.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, Mohsin. I'll check the papers because I need to see how they have done it. It's quite helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhuka. Thank you very much.
Mohsin, you have a question in the YouTube chat box.
Okay, so if the outcome is measured via Likert scale, how do we decide on the values? So for the presence and okay, so yeah, so okay, Malik, what happens is that yes, you do that, but then the truth table does that. So so you have 1 to 5, right? But 1 to 7, whatever, and then you calibrate based on each respondents. 0.45, 0. So it becomes, so 0 to 1. It would become 0 to 1. And when you run the truth table, set that, allocate it to 0.8. So it will base very similar. Once it goes to the truth table, it will follow exactly the one that we discussed in this particular case. Yep. Okay, Malik. Thanks. Okay, so we are just hitting the time. Any other question that we may have?
There is another question in the chat box.
Yeah, can you? I'll just open this one. Ahmed, my eyesight is fading. Too many screens, right? Okay. What is the minimum number? Oh gosh. Yes. Yeah. It's sad here, right? Oh yeah. See, in one of the papers that I published, the reviewer wanted I brought some number, but I think there is no specific minimal number, right? I think 10 would be the minimum. I think 10, anything less than 10, I would have really justify. There are some numbers. There's a paper called MX something, which I think I sent to Andres as well. But to me, there is 10 should be somewhat is the least we could do. To me, anything less, I will struggle. But Andres, you are more than happy to comment on this one because you worked on this one as well. Andres, you would want to comment?
No, I have no real comment there. In my case, I had 50, so I had quite many cases. I really don't know there what is the minimum number.
Yeah. So from my thanks, Andres. Yeah. So yeah, I think there's no specific threshold established as yet. 10 you could justify. Ideally, I think 20 would be very good. 15 to 20 would be very good. But anything less than 10 would be difficult. Okay, with that, all of you would want to have these slides. I think I'll share on Teams. Anyone who is not part of Teams, please write to me and I will add to our Teams forum for email exchanges and resources like this. The papers that I've mentioned, they're also provided in Teams files. And as always, please feel free to write to me if you've got any question. I'll be more than happy to help if I can. So thank you very much for attending and listening to me and Ahmed. Ahmed, thank you very much for helping me today.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, Andres. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel.
Thank you.
I must say that I was really impressed of the presentation. It was very good.
Not the first time you're listening to me, Andres.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can still hear you. It was really good. It was good even for us that have some experience just when you went through everything from the introduction. And I think it was very good. I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you very much. Let's keep working together.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice evening for you then. I will start my work now.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, because of the bandwidth, I stopped my screen, but yeah, I'm listening to you. I'm watching you. Thank you very much.